So good morning, students. Let's proceed with where we had left off in the last class. So a quick recap. What we have done in the previous class is we have understood the concept of attenuation, and we have seen that in the fiber, the attenuation is very strong in the sense that the input power uh, undergoes an exponential decay, and it comes when it comes out on the other end, that is at the receiver end. So we have seen the different equations of attenuation, and we have seen that if we are given the input output power, we can find alpha, which is the attenuation constant in dB per kilometer. Vice versa, if the attenuation constant and one of the powers is given, we can find the other power. Right. There are also questions which are based on finding the length of the fiber, provided both the power values and alpha is given. So we have solved numericals based on that. We came across a new unit called as dBm, and we understood that the dBm unit is evaluated with reference to or relative to 1 milliwatt of power. So we've seen how we can calculate the dBm as well. And then in the last class, we looked at how this attenuation occurs. What are the reasons behind this attenuation? So as you can see on the screen, there are three reasons why this attenuation would occur. So you have the absorption loss, the scattering loss, and the bending loss. And within them, you have different kinds of losses. So in the absorption, you have the absorption loss due to atomic defects. You have the extrinsic and the intrinsic absorption. So we discussed that in detail. When it comes to scattering, you could have linear scattering or non-linear scattering. So in the linear scattering, the most popular is the Rayleigh scattering, which is inversely proportional to the wavelength. So we've looked at that. There's another kind of scattering, linear scattering, known as Mie or Mie scattering. So we looked at that as well. And in the non-linear scattering, I explained to you how the Raman scattering and the Brillouin scattering would affect the power. Then we have the bending loss, which is macro and micro. So these are large scale or small scale fluctuations or changes in the fiber, because of which the light would escape the core of the fiber. So please keep in mind that in fiber, our aim is to always have light propagating only inside the core of the fiber. However, practically that is not possible. There is some light that always escapes into the cladding, but there are ways to retrieve that light, and there are also ways to enhance the performance if some light is lost. Please understand, losing light is basically implying that you are losing some part of the data, right? Because the fiber, you are transmitting data in the form of light, so we cannot afford to be losing light. So the total internal reflection has to occur in the fiber, for which the acceptance angle has to be at a certain angle. And we have seen previously in the first module that if that is not the case, then the light is just going to be escaping the core of the fiber, right? So now, having done this part of attenuation, now let's move to the other part of the losses that we have. In general, in fiber terminology, this is known as impairments. So impairments, there is one impairment which we have already done, which is attenuation. There is another impairment which we are going to start now, which is dispersion. And then there is a third kind of impairments which is outside the scope of this syllabus, but just for your information, it is known as non-linear effects. Non-linear effects. The reason is they are non-linear because the fiber itself is non-linear. So in this case, this is just for your information, this is not part of the syllabus. So in this, you have different kinds of non-linear effects. The first and the major one is known as four-wave mixing. Four-wave mixing, or in short, FWM. So what happens in this is, if you have let's say two signals like this at different wavelength, lambda 1 and lambda 2, they combine together and they produce another third signal at lambda 3, and then they also destructively combine and produce another wavelength at let's say minus lambda 2, right? and these new wavelengths, that is the new signals, start to interfere with the original signal. So that is your 4-wave mixing. Okay. The other one is known as cross phase modulation. So because of this, I cannot go into the detail because we are not equipped to completely understand cross phase modulation. But in cross phase modulation, as the name suggests, the phase gets modulated or changed. And then there is a third effect which we have just seen in short previously. It is known as the Raman scattering. Or let me use the entire word. It is the stimulated Raman scattering. So it's a negative effect when it comes to non-linear effects. But as I told you previously, you can also use this Raman scattering as a positive effect in Raman amplifiers, which we'll be discussing in module 4. Okay. So these are the three impairments. But of course, non-linear impairments are completely out of the scope of this syllabus. So we're not going to touch upon this at all. We have done attenuation. Now we'll move on to what is dispersion, right? So, so we have seen very clearly that attenuation is going to affect the power level, right? That's why we were always calculating the output power given the input power and knowing the attenuation constant. So this power level is basically going to affect the cost of the network, right? Cost of network, because ultimately you will combine all this source, receiver, fiber, amplifiers, everything put together is going to then form a network. It could be a star network, hub network, mesh network, and so on, right? So now we'll move to dispersion. So dispersion, as we'll very quickly see, is going to affect the bandwidth of the system. It is going to affect the bandwidth of the system. So this dispersion is basically broadening of the light pulses. The broadening of the light pulses with distance as the pulses are going to move ahead. It is one of the critical factors, I would say, or a key factor that is going to limit your signal transmission quality. Okay, or in terms of networking, it is known as quality of service. So the quality of service, which is in short QoS, is defined or is dependent on the dispersion. So you can think as a customer, the quality of service which you expect from your internet provider is that you should get the promised internet, that is the speed, and there should not be any delay or lag or any system fluctuations, right? So that is the quality of service which we obtain, right? So this is a key parameter, dispersion, which affects the quality of service, and we need to minimize it. Dispersion is always going to be there. There is no question of getting rid of it, but our aim should be to try and minimize it as much as possible, right? So why does this dispersion occur? So we are going to focus only on the fiber. There are different dispersions in different channels, but we will focus only on optical fiber. So the dispersion in the optical fiber is because of physical properties and geometry of the fiber. Okay, and this you cannot change, because once the fiber is made, it is made. So we cannot be changing the geometry of the fiber or the physical properties of the fiber. So how does this dispersion look like visually, right? So this is what is going to happen. I've drawn this diagram before, but just for completeness, I'll draw again. So if this is the original signal which we have transmitted, let this be the amplitude on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we have time. So if your signal looks original signal looks like this, and if you propagate this, if this signal propagates through the fiber, I'm only making the core of the fiber, then at the output, this is what is going to occur. The first, let me denote these signals. This is let's say signal 1, this is signal 2, and this is signal 3. Then because of having traveled a certain distance, the first signal becomes something like this, and it starts interfering with the second signal, which interferes with the third signal. And this interference here, which I am now shading, is your dispersion, is the dispersion. Right. So I'd already told you what is one of the solutions that we can have to reduce the dispersion. So you can introduce what is known as guard band. So guard band is empty frequency slots. Empty frequency slots or empty frequency spaces. And because of this, even if the broadening of pulses happens, it is quite likely that the 2 pulses or 3 pulses will not interfere. But there is a downfall to this. You are having empty frequency slots and not transmitting any data. So that's not a good thing, right? So in general, mathematically, and we'll prove this later on in module 3, that for no overlapping of light pulses down the fiber, the digital bit rate must be less than the reciprocal of the broadened pulse duration. Okay, so I'm going to call the pulse duration as some 2 tau. So therefore the digital bit rate, and I'm calling it digital bit rate because the optical system is a digital communication system. Therefore the bit rate, the digital bit rate, and I'm calling it some p subscript t, as the definition says, must be less than or equal to less than or equal to the reciprocal of the broadened pulse. That means 1 by 2 tau. So right now we only need to know this equation, but we'll prove this equation in module 3. Okay, so if this happens, it is seen that the light pulse will not overlap. Of course, this is only in theory. In practice, it doesn't happen. So this is only in theory. So theoretically, you can follow this equation and say that if this is satisfied, the pulses are not going to overlap. But in practice, that doesn't happen. And the second point here is the maximum bit rate with dispersion may be obtained by considering the light pulses at the output to have a Gaussian shape, with RMS width sigma as, so if you have the bitrate Bt and the max or the maximum value of this bitrate, and this is found to be 0.2 by sigma bits per second. So this is another equation which we need to know now, but we'll be deriving this in module 3. Okay, so right now you must be thinking that we are only told what these equations are. but we'll be deriving this. It makes sense to derive them more with when we talk about sources and receivers, because you'll understand this much better, right? Because it is actually how we use the source and how we use the receiver that really affects how much dispersion would be there. Mostly how you're using the source, or what kind of source are we using, right? So we'll see that LED, if used as a source, is going to lead to much more dispersion, which we see practically. I've already given you the example of a railway station, where if you move away from those boards where the train and the train number is specified, you can see that the 0 starts to look like an 8, a 6 starts to look like an 8. So with distance, the LED's efficiency goes down. So that we'll be seeing in module 3, and we'll see that the dispersion is going to be very high when you use LED in comparison to the lasers. Okay. So these are the two equations which we are supposed to know, but we'll be deriving them in module 3. Right? So based on this, let's do a quick question, and then we'll move further with the dispersion. Okay. So let us try to solve this one numerical. It's a simple numerical. So it says a multi-mode graded index fiber exhibits pulse broadening of 0.1 microsecond over a distance of 15 kilometer. The question is, estimate one maximum possible bandwidth assuming no inter-symbol interference. Second, pulse dispersion per unit length. And third, bandwidth length product. This again we are going to see in module 3 that uh, the metrics which are used, or the parameters which are used to evaluate the performance of fiber optic communication system, apart from the usual ones like bit error rate or signal to noise ratio, we'll see that this bandwidth length product is another metric or parameter which defines how good the optical fiber system is. So in general, this is known as the BL metric. Okay, metric is another word for the parameter which specifies how good the system is. So you can have a bit rate, you can have a bit error rate of 10 raised to minus 3 or 10 raised to minus 6 and say whether the system is good or it is not that good, right? So likewise, we can use the bandwidth length product as well. So let's look at the solution. The first part says we need to calculate the maximum possible bandwidth. Any questions? Any question? Okay. So part 1 says we need to calculate the maximum possible bandwidth assuming no inter-symbol interference. Right? So we already have this equation that the bandwidth, if I call it BT, or the bit rate, is 1 by 2 tau. So BT is 1 by 2 tau, and we are already given the value of tau because it says that I think we were not given the value of tau. We are given. It says it exhibits a pulse broadening. So your pulse broadening is 0.1 microseconds. So 1 by 2 tau here will become 1 by 2 into 0.1 into microseconds, so 10 raised to minus 6, and the units here will be second, right? So this will become 1 by 0.2 into 10 raised to minus 6, and this will be, the units will be second inverse. So since we are calculating maximum possible bandwidth, it is obviously got to be in hertz. Therefore BT here will be some value and it will be hertz, right? So I'll take the 10 raised to negative 6 in the numerator. Therefore the units of hertz will become megahertz, and 1 by 0.2 is nothing but 5. Therefore BT will be 5 megahertz. Okay. In the next part, we are supposed to find maximum so the pulse dispersion per unit length. So you have dispersion per unit length, which is kilometer. So the dispersion is, or the broadening is given to us 1.1 into 10 raised to negative 6 seconds divided by kilometer. And if I scroll up, you can see that the distance which is given to us is 15 kilometer, right? So the distance here is 15 kilometer. Therefore we'll have 0.1 into 10 raised to negative 6 divided by 15, and this 15 is going to be kilometers, right? So you can see here I'm writing the units with those numbers because the units are very, very important. So this calculation here gives me 0.1 by 15 gives me 6.67. So we'll have 6.67 and you have a 10 raised to negative 3 as well. So 10 raised to negative 9. So nanoseconds per kilometer. So this dispersion per kilometer comes to 6.67 nanoseconds per kilometer. Then in the third question, we need to calculate the bandwidth length product. Bandwidth length product. That means we need to calculate bandwidth into length. So BT is already calculated in part 1. So you have 5 megahertz. So 5 into 10 raised to 6 hertz into the length, which is given to us, is 15 kilometer. So you'll have 75, and I'll keep 10 raised to 6 as it is. So megahertz kilometer. That will be the bandwidth length product. Okay. So I hope you have understood how we can use these equations. Of course, we still have to derive these equations, and very soon we'll see how they can be related to their use in terms of the sources as well as the receivers. So I hope there is no question based on this. There's just the use of those equations which were specified. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. So we'll move on, and let's now look at what are the types of the dispersions. Okay. So our next topic is types of dispersion, and in this we have two categories. One is known as the intermodal dispersion, and the other is known as intramodal dispersion. So one is the intermodal dispersion and the other is the intramodal dispersion. Okay. Now intermodal dispersion, which is also in short known as IMD. Okay. So this IMD, intermodal dispersion, usually occurs in multimode fibers. Why? Because it is intermodal. So 2 modes, 3 modes or 4 modes, and likewise many modes will interfere with each other. That's why it is known as the intermodal dispersion. Okay. The next is known as the intramodal dispersion. Next is known as the intramodal dispersion, and this dispersion occurs in single mode fibers. Why? Because it is intramodal, just between the one mode, right? That's why it is intramodal. So I'll write this here for clarity. Between the one mode. So single mode fiber is going to have only one mode, and between that one mode you have some kind of dispersion. Right? This intramodal dispersion can be split into 2 types of dispersions. One is known as material dispersion, and the other is known as waveguide dispersion. Right? So combining all that, the intramodal dispersion will be material dispersion plus waveguide dispersion, and the total dispersion, D total, will be a total of intermodal dispersion in multimode fibers plus the intramodal dispersion which will be the material dispersion plus waveguide dispersion. So this total dispersion equation we'll see at the end of the module, when we can combine all of these dispersions together and find the total dispersion. Now, based on these properties of the dispersions, we can also design different kinds of fibers, and those kind of fibers will help us reduce. The catchword is reduce, not get rid of. Okay. So these kind of special fibers will help us reduce the dispersion at certain wavelengths. Okay. So we'll see what those kind of fibers are as well as we move on. Okay. So I hope it is clear what kind of dispersions we are going to look at. So we are going to look at the intermodal dispersion, and we are going to look at the intramodal dispersion. Okay. And then finally our aim is to see what kind of fibers can be used to minimize this dispersion, and then what would be the total dispersion. Okay. So what we'll do now is we'll derive the equation for the intermodal dispersion. That means today we'll do what kind of dispersion occurs in the multimode fiber. We have time for that. Okay. And then in the next lecture we'll pick on the intramodal dispersion, that is waveguide, and the material dispersion. Okay. So today we are going to do the intermodal dispersion, or in short IMD. Now here I should mention to you that this intermodal dispersion in John Senior, your book, you will see that it is specified in chapter 1 itself, when they do the Snell's law and other things. But I just feel that at that point it's too early to specify, so I wait till module 2 to specify. So right now is the time that we can really understand what this dispersion is. Okay. So let's first understand why this dispersion occurs. So I'll just mention quickly the important points. So this dispersion is caused due to time delay between the various modes to travel to the destination point. Okay, so visually this is how we can imagine it or visualize it, right? So let's say we take a core of the fiber. Okay, let this be the input and let that be the output. Now we are transmitting the bits like this. I'm just assuming some amount of guard band between these bits 1, 2 and 3, Now once you insert them into the fiber, and I'm only representing the core, because of this intermodal dispersion, okay, what we expect at the output is that these bits should reach on time. That means 1, 2 and 3 must appear as they appeared at the input. Okay, so this is your output or the receiver, and this is your input. But because of the presence of this intermodal dispersion, what happens is bit 1 may get delayed in regard to bit 2 and bit 3. So visually it may happen that bit 3 may be a little delayed compared to say bit 2 and bit 1. Therefore, instead of getting what we think of getting or what we desire, what you end up getting is something like this. You'll end up getting 3 first, then maybe 1 next and 2 next, and of course they'll also be broadened, right? So because of this dispersion effect, the bits are delayed in time, right? And because of that, the actual picture looks like this. The actual picture at the output looks like this. So you'll have one bit like that, bit like this, and bit like that, where the dispersion has occurred, and the bits are also delayed. So you may get 3, 1 and 2. So it's all chaotic at the receiver's end, and the receiver really is not sure which bit has come first or which bit has come second, right? So this is usually found in the multi-mode fiber, and the reason for the delay, why this delay occurs, is time difference between lowest and highest order modes, right? So let's try to understand this. What is this lowest order and the highest order, right? So this is the core with a refractive index n1. This is the cladding with refractive index n2 less than n1, and n refractive index is c by v. Therefore n1 is c by v1 and n2 is c by v2. Now since n2 is less than n1, that implies c by v2 is less than c by v1. I can cancel the two c's. That implies v1 is less than v2. That means velocity of the mode inside the core is slower compared to the velocity of the mode inside the cladding, right? So what is going to happen? The mode or the modes which are closer to the cladding, pay attention to where I'm shading, the modes which are closer to the cladding will travel faster compared to the modes, look at the dotted line, compared to the modes which are inside the core of the fiber, they will be slower, right? So this will lead to a time difference. So the mode which is closer to the boundary of core and fiber will move faster, because the velocity of those modes near the cladding is going to be faster compared to the modes which are at the axis of the fiber, that is very much inside the core of the fiber. They will be much slower. So that leads to time difference of this these modes, because of which the delay is going to occur, right? So that is the idea there. So we had already discussed this velocity point in module 1. It has come back again in module 2, and it helps us in understanding why this delay occurs in the modes, because of which the intermodal dispersion occurs, right? Let's look at the derivation. So for that, I'm just making this diagram, so it helps us understand much better. Okay, so let this be the core of the fiber, let this be the cladding of the fiber. let this be the fiber axis. Now let us assume that this light is following the acceptance angle, and it's inserted into the fiber with the kind of acceptance angle that we need. So therefore the light is going to undergo the total internal reflection, and it stays inside the core of the fiber. Okay. Now the ray here on the dotted line is known as the axial ray because it is on the axis of the fiber. The other ray, which we discussed in module 1, is known as the meridional ray. Because it is on the meridian of the fiber, that is, it is only across the axis of the fiber, right? So now the denotation is T max is the maximum time, right? And this is the time taken by the longest ray, right, to reach the output. Which is the longest ray on that diagram? The longest ray is the meridional ray. Why is it the longest ray? Because if, as you can see, it is hitting the cladding of the fiber. So it has to go all the way from the core to the cladding, hit the cladding, and then come back inside the fiber. So that is the longest ray, and that is going to take the maximum time, right? Next is T minimum. This is the shortest time. This is the shortest time, right? Time taken by the axial ray. Why the axial ray? This is the shortest time by the axial ray. Why? Because as you can see in the diagram, that axial ray is just passing through the axis of the fiber, just straight up. It is not going anywhere near the cladding, right? So I'll make it more specific. T max is the longest time which is taken by the meridional ray, and T min is the shortest time taken by the axial ray to reach the destination. So you have T max and T min. Let us have delta T, which is the time difference between them, and so you will have delta T as T max minus T min, right? I hope you have understood from the diagram that the meridional ray is going to take the longest time, right? So let me make it more clear on the diagram. So this is going to be the ray with the longest time, and this axial ray is going to be the ray with the shortest time. With the shortest time, that is the longest time and the shortest time to reach the destination, that is at the receiver, right? So based on this, now we can calculate that delta T. So what is the time difference for these two the rays, these kind of rays, to reach the destination of the fiber, right? So what happens at the destination? Okay. So before we go into the derivation, I'll also introduce you to another concept which we require to in discussing the dispersion ahead as well. So every mode has a different, what is known as the group velocity, at a single frequency. So this group velocity is required more to discuss about material and waveguide dispersion, that is the intramodal dispersion. But this group velocity basically means that if you have multiple modes which are traveling inside the fiber, then the velocity or the speed of a group of these modes will give you the group velocity. Of course, it also has a particular equation for itself, and we'll see how we can define this group velocity. It is denoted as Vg, and it is related to another parameter which is known as tau g, which is the time that the group velocity takes. It is also related to what is known as the phase velocity, which we'll discuss when we talk about the material dispersion and the waveguide dispersion. Okay. So for now, we only need to know that there is something which is known as the group velocity, that is the velocity of a group of these signals or the modes which travel at a single frequency, or in some books, specifically your Gerd Kaiser, you'll also read this as having different group velocity at a single wavelength. Okay, and this is very useful to us when we talk about the sources, because each source will work only at a certain wavelength or certain frequency. Okay, so this derivation takes a little bit of time and numerical. So if I start it, will not be able to finish it. Uh, let us we have another 2-3 minutes. Let us just quickly recap what we have done today, and we'll start with this derivation in the next lecture, and we'll follow it up with the intramodal dispersion, which also has mathematics. Okay, so in today's lecture we have just seen what dispersion is. It is going to affect the bandwidth of the system. That is the quality of service that a customer is going to request. It depends on the physical property and geometry of the fiber. So I've shown you how this dispersion looks like, how it is related to the bit rate, how it is related to the broadening, that is the tau. Why this broadening happens is because of the geometry and making of the fiber. We've solved one numerical based on that equation. Then I introduced you to the types of fibers that we have, types of dispersions that we have. So we have the intermodal dispersion and the intramodal dispersion, and then I told you that the intermodal dispersion occurs only in the multimode fiber, whereas the intramodal dispersion is going to occur in the single mode fiber. And in the intramodal dispersion, you have two types, which is the material dispersion and the waveguide dispersion. These both are going to depend on the material of the fiber, how the fiber is made. They are going to be dependent on that. And then we just started with intermodal dispersion, and this is caused by the time delay in the various modes inside the multimode fiber. And we want to see how this time delay occurs between the longest mode and the shortest mode. So for the derivation, we have assumed or we have considered two modes. One is the shortest mode, which is on the axis of the fiber, and the other is the longest mode, which is at the boundary of the core and the cladding. And the time difference between these two, that is T max and T minimum, is going to give us delta T. That is going to be the difference of time taken by these modes, right? So once you have considered the worst case, that is the longest and the shortest, then the time difference for all other modes will fall between this, right? So that is the idea here. And I've just introduced you to group velocity, which will have more of its use in ahead in waveguide and the material dispersion. Okay. So I think we are already off time. So I'll be doing this derivation in the next lecture.